So we're going to jump back into Sam Stein's closing statement now, who's a lawyer for some of the sub-postmasters, and explore Fujitsu's role in all this and the revelations, particularly focusing on the bugs and remote access, which I explain in more detail later on. But there's at least one absolute no-go area where they went. Let's jump into the inquiry.
The Post Office did not do all of this alone. Fujitsu were complicit from the outset. Mr. Patterson told us on the 19th of January that Fujitsu knew about the bugs, errors and defects for many years, and right from the very start of the deployment of the system. Ms. Munro acknowledged Fujitsu's complicity when answering questions from ourselves on the 18th of January of this year. She was asked whether she thought postmasters' mistresses were being prosecuted in circumstances where the Post Office, with Fujitsu's assistance, was misrepresenting the robustness and integrity of the Horizon system. Her answer was, based on what I've seen and read today, I would say yes.
I mean, that in and of itself, the outlandish statements that before phase 4 of the inquiry we couldn't have imagined anybody at Fujitsu making. But there, we're not only talking about an awareness of bugs from the very start on the Fujitsu side, which presumably, and we've seen the involvement of the Post Office with that. It almost seems like they were kind of happy to be at arm's length from each other. So Post Office could say, well, we didn't design the system, we didn't develop the system, bugs, what bugs? They wanted that plausible deniability, but how intertwined the two organisations were understandably on such a massive project has kind of blown that totally out of the water. And the fact that somebody who used to work at Fujitsu in evidence has turned around and said, well, actually, the evidence was misrepresented by the Post Office. I guess from Fujitsu's side, they would say, well, the prosecutions aren't really anything to do with us, but actually they were, because their evidence from their system and their witnesses, their workers there, their statements of fact backed up with opinion based on what the data they said was showing was fundamental to the Post Office's case. But by the very fact two massive organisations have been involved in this, feel like they almost felt that there was a bit of plausible deniability in suggesting from Fujitsu's side, oh, well, we didn't know that they were going to say this kind of thing about the system and the bugs, because we know that wasn't true. And the Post Office were going to say, oh, well, we didn't know about any bug fixes that were going on, any remote access that Fujitsu were doing on their side of things. But actually, that argument doesn't hold water, because both sides should have been aware of exactly what the other was doing. And I feel like they felt like they were keeping each other sufficiently at arm's length to be able to kind of let the blame fall through the cracks. But one of the things which has been highlighted here is actually the fact that that isn't a plausible reason. Senior management at both organisations should have been well aware of what was happening. Fujitsu knew what was happening to the statements. They knew where they were going. They might not have been launching the prosecution. And the Post Office was fundamentally aware of problems with Horizon through the discussions and email trails that we've seen.
Now turn to the question of remote access. In doing so, I'm going to ask for the one document I'm going to ask to go onto the screen, and that is FUJ 402023. Could we go, please, to page 13 of 18, using the internal pagination at the bottom, and highlight, please, the paragraph at the top, which is 2.7.1.5. Thank you. So in dealing briefly with the evidence that relates to remote access, it is helpful to remind ourselves of what was said in relation to the Horizon system about third line and fourth line, the support service. This document is dated, as we can see, the 31st of August 2006. And it sets out that the application support service, fourth line and third line support service work closely together in the identification and resolution of software incidents requiring bug fixes. That's what they did. Let's add to that remote access. In phase 4, the inquiry heard the evidence of Anne Chambers in September, who accepted that there were occasions where the Fujitsu team would use a branch user ID when inserting transactions. In those circumstances, the insertion would not be detectable. Of course, Mr. Roll told the inquiry in March 2023 that the amount of access to terminals that Fujitsu had was pretty shocking. Furthermore, Mr. Simpkins, a Fujitsu team leader, confirmed in his evidence on January the 17th that there was unrestricted access to the live system, and that access seems to have been unaudited.
I mean, there's two main big things here. The secrecy around bug fixes, at least beyond senior management at both organisations, is totally unnecessary and unneeded. People understand that computer systems have bugs. In fact, it's the first thing that caught my attention a number of years ago about the post office scandal. This insistence that there are no bugs in enterprise software. There are bugs in every piece of software. If there's one thing to come out of this, I hope it's the general recognition that anybody who tries to sell you bug-free software, okay, is lying. They all have bugs, but this air of secrecy around the fact that there would be bugs, and everybody certainly in a technical role understands that that cannot be possible, and almost the secret fixing, it felt like as issues were raised, rather than them being used in a supportive way, there was almost potentially an attempt actually to cover them up by releasing fixes in a rush maybe into live systems to stop it. And bug fixes in haste usually lead to way more problems than holding your hands up, saying there's this issue, identifying that with both your clients, so in this case the post office, and the users, the sub-postmasters, to say there may be some irregularities with X, Y and Z while we investigate it. Because without proper investigation of a bug fix, you rarely get to the root problem. You might be able to patch it up and make it look okay in the short term, but actually you can introduce new bugs, and you can actually, if you don't get to the hub of why a bug is existing, because for example a bug can cause many symptoms. If you just merely fix one symptom, it's similar to medicine. If somebody is ill with a condition that is giving them numerous symptoms, there is a difference between curing the condition, i.e. a proper fix of a bug, and merely masking a symptom. Okay, it's like saying somebody who needs surgery because they're in a lot of pain can be fixed, if you like, in computer terms, by giving them painkillers. No, that might relieve a symptom temporarily, but the underlying problem there still remains. And the second aspect of this is if you are rushing around with bug fixes, you can't be testing them properly. These should be properly tested in live-like environments, so testing environments that are regularly refreshed from live systems, so they've got plausible data, previous data, attempts to recreate the bug to confirm its existence firstly, and then when you put the patch into a testing system, thorough testing to ensure that you can't actually reproduce the bug anymore, and that you've not introduced any further issues into the system with the fix. But in every project that I have ever worked on in terms of software development, there has rarely, if ever, been a situation that has been made better by a hasty bug fix. In fact, sometimes it actually causes catastrophic consequences. And moving on to the remote access. Again, remote access to a system in and of itself isn't necessarily a problem. So why there was such secrecy around this is beyond me. Presumably they felt like it would weaken prosecutions that they were intending on bringing, but trying to hide that fact, as was pointed out by Sam Stein here, okay, would have led to every judge questioning every case based on horizon data when there's bug fixes seemingly being applied, changes to the system on the fly. But the biggest error in all this, okay, the sharing of passwords. How often do we have it drilled into us? Do not share your access with anybody. How many times are we told by banks, do not share your PIN number with anybody to your account. Don't share your one-time passcodes. Not even if we're saying it's us, we will never ask for it, because that is you authenticating a decision. And the thing which blows a hole in absolutely every single case here, okay, is the fact that there seems to have been some practice of using sub-postmasters' own IDs, own usernames and passwords, their own accounts. And I think it goes beyond really what Sam Stein said here. It's not the fact that there wasn't an audit trail created by that. There was a false audit trail. The entire audit trail has now been compromised because the system will report the sub-postmaster has done something when actually it was somebody at Fujitsu doing something. If they fixed it, great. But if they introduced a problem, well, it's all going to get blamed on the sub-postmaster now. That should never, ever, 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 ever happen. Passwords, usernames should never, ever, 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 ever be shared. There should be no God mode-like access to a system that is not auditable. Everything should be auditable in a system that is dealing with such complex transactions, accounting and finances. It's just an absolute no-go area where they went.
It is more than clear that if Fujitsu and the post office had come clear about the bugs, the purposes of the helplines, the interactions, the fact that the teams at 3 and 4 of the service line were fixing bugs in combination with remote access, if that had been revealed in relation to any matters taken against sub-postmasters and mistresses in either civil or criminal actions, any judge having that brought to their attention would have required further and deeper information. This scandal could have been avoided if either the post office or Fujitsu had done the right thing. Fujitsu, we say, chose to hide behind its contract, actively supporting its contractual partner and financial benefactor, and getting a few more years of public contracts, adding to its £1 billion global empire. The document can come down from the screen with my thanks.